earth mineral called anthracite. So it was about I would say about the 1840s, several of us, 12 of us that got together and sought a charter, and that charter became the Luzerne County Bank. The first capital project we sought and were able to realize was a planked road from Wilkes-Barre to Pittston. Shortly thereafter, we established a telegraph line from Philadelphia to Pittston. In fact, we were so progressive in Pittston that many of the excitement was palpable that we got a petition up to move the county seat out of the dilapidated, not so progressive Wilkes-Barre. Sadly, it failed. I would say right around 1850, I sought to make it easier to get from the east side to the west side, and I was able to work to the construction of a plank depot bridge, which basically replaced the only way people were able to get from one side of the river to the other, which was a ferry. It was at this time that the West Pittston Land Association that I had founded sought out to buy the farmland here and set it into motion to where it would be parceled off. And many of us working in Pittston saw West Pittston, as we envisioned it, to be the ideal residential community that would support work in Pittston. So it was in the autumn of 1857 when we incorporated West Pittston into a borough, and our first election was held, I believe, in the early part of 1858. In 1853, I met my wife. I was married to my wife, Miss Ella Stark, and we had one daughter. And it was her education and development that we spared no expense on. Both her mother and I wanted her to become a young lady of society. Probably around the 1860s, I sought out to build the grandest home, not only in West Pittston, but in the entire valley. So I had a sprawling mansion built at the corner of Montgomery Avenue and Susquehanna Avenue. We had many, many parties there. We entertained guests from 20 to 100. Every 4th of July, we would have our large porches filled with people watching fireworks over the Susquehanna River. I also got into several other industries, one of which was in West Pittston here. It was called the Pittston Knitting Mills. And we basically made woolen undergarments, which I know at this time of the year are probably pretty popular even still. I also had an interest in DuPont gunpowder and eliminated oils, which was very important as the Industrial Revolution continued. By about 1901, I was about ready to shuffle off this mortal coil, and I gave a sum of $200 to the cemetery to ensure that our grave parcels would be cared for in perpetuity, and I do hope that they continue with that mission.
Is that the voice of Mr. Thomas Ford I hear?
Voice is that? I know that voice.
It's your daughter, Jessie Ford Smith.
My dear, I thought I would never hear your lovely voice again. Please tell your story, which I trust will be far more exciting than mine, you fine people.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Hello, everyone. I am Jessie Ford Smith of New York City, and I am the daughter of Thomas and Ellen Ford. I grew up here in West Pittston. I was born in the year 1862, which was at the time of the Great Civil War. As my father mentioned, I was raised with every privilege due to the wealth that he and my mother had. I grew up in our beautiful home on Susquehanna Avenue. I was very well educated. I had many friends, and I even attended the Wyoming Cemetery, which for a young lady of my time was highly unusual. And this was due to my parents being very forward-looking and very progressive about the ideas of how women should participate in society and be fully educated. While I was at the Wyoming Cemetery, I made friends with a young woman named Henrietta Smith of New York City, and I began visiting her there. I would take the train from Pittston to Penn Station, New York, and spend time with her and her family. And it was on those trips that I came to fall in love with her brother, Edward Smith, a young lawyer. Well, with the agreement of both of our families, we were married here in our home in 1889. A truly magnificent wedding with hundreds of people, the rooms filled with flowers and gifts and people. It was such a joyous occasion. And if any of you are doing a little bit of mathematics in your head, you might have noticed I was married at 27 years old. Now, the reason I choose to bring this up is that to be married at 27 years old at my time was outrageously old. And I don't want any of you to think that it was due to any flaw in my character that kept me from having suitors, as I had many suitors. But I waited for the right suitor to come along, Mr. Smith. And I believe that all you ladies would agree with me that a woman should wait for the right man to come along, wait for the proper proposal, rather than taking the first gentleman who comes along and wants to marry her. Sometimes it's not a bad idea to wait. And it was a good idea for me, as Mr. Smith and I had a wonderful life in New York City together. His law firm affording us a very nice manner of living and giving me access to New York's finest society. In 1911, we were invited to attend the opening of the Woolworth Building on Broadway, then the tallest building in the world, built by Mr. Frank Woolworth and paid for in cash, nearly $11 million in cash that he made in his 5 and dime stores across the country. I do think it is the only building, even up until your time, to be built without debt, to be paid for in cash. The architect was the great Frank Cass Gilbert, and on the top it looks like a cathedral, a massive cathedral. And so we had a name for it, the Cathedral of Commerce. Well, on opening night, Mr. Woolworth invited 400 people to attend a dinner with an orchestra that played the Star-Spangled Banner, and the whole tower was filled with electric lights. The switch was flipped on from the White House by President Woodrow Wilson, and for the first time, the Woolworth Tower lit the skyline of the city of New York. All ships at sea were cabled that the Woolworth Building was open and now taller than the Eiffel Tower of Paris, which made our city the centerpiece of the world. Also at that time in New York, life was so beautiful for us. The ladies, we would walk along Madison Square Park, and there were rows of lovely, handsome cabs, an elaborate, beautiful carriage drawn by horses that you could hire to take you anywhere in the city you wanted to go. Or if you were more adventurous, you could climb the steps up to the elevated train lines that also took you everywhere. And I got to live long enough to see those train lines submerge underground and become the subway system. On one of my first trips with Miss Henrietta Smith, imagine how shocked I was to see Broadway all lit with electric lights. Broadway, Madison Avenue, Fifth Avenue, the stores, the shops, the glittering lights and colors. It was so magnificent and beautiful. Now, our social life brought us into contact with many important people at that time, but my personal favorite were the authors, and I wonder if any of you still read the works of my friend, Mrs. Edith Wharton, or her friend, Mr. Henry James, who wrote all about life in New York at the turn of the century. Well, not forgetting my father's ideas of civic duty and philanthropy, I did not lead just a socialite's life in New York. I also considered the town in which I grew up, which I loved so much. In 1910, I gave a grant for the YMCA to put on an expansion, which included a swimming pool and a gymnasium. Now, negotiations over this reached a fever pitch when I insisted that women be allowed to use this facility to swim and exercise. And you can imagine in 1910 how the gentlemen on that board of directors thought about that proposal. But I made it very clear to them that no money would be forthcoming unless the ladies were allowed to use the facility as well. And they agreed to, can you believe it, 1 day per week. Which I know is a small victory, but one I hope opened the door so that the ladies of your time could be treated with more equality and respect. I'm very grateful to my parents who raised me the way they did, and for them to allow me to marry Mr. Smith and move to New York City. But even after 50 years there, when it came time to bequeath my own fortune, I turned back to the place I grew up and loved so much. At that time, I had accumulated in your dollars about $19 million in cash, stocks, and bonds, and I left half of it to my cousin, Alice Foster Bevins, and her husband, and the rest I distributed among other causes, organizations, and people I had known since my childhood. One of them was my very good friend, Grace Hughes, who also moved to to New York City and was my lifelong friend. Now, our beautiful home on Susquehanna Avenue, I'm sure, is no longer here, because I'm embarrassed to say that after the passing of my parents, I did not give it the care and upkeep it needed. It fell therefore into total disarray. The garden's gone to seed, the shutters falling off, and I was approached, I think about 1910, by someone I knew in my childhood named Lyman Howe. Mr. Howe created silent films, or silent movies, you may be familiar with them, and he asked if one could be made in the house. I had mixed feelings about this because I knew he was making something called a thriller, and that the reason he liked the home so much was that it looked scary, like a haunted house. But I agreed that he could film his piece there, and it became known as A Woman in Gray was the name of it. Now, it was released in, I don't know if you're familiar with this, in serial format, so every week another episode of it came out. Mr. Smith and I went with our friends to see it in New York, and you can imagine how popular I became when our friends realized that the movie in the haunted house was my own childhood home, which I'm sure is long gone by now, having given way for many more homes to rise in its place, and many families to have births and marriages and college graduations and other joyous affairs. Thank you so much for coming to hear the story of my father and me. Mr. Ford, are you still here with us, or have you left? You are still here.
Yes, indeed. Have any here present, any of you present here have any questions for my daughter or I?
Our time grows short, so please speak up if you do. We are happy to answer.
Did you have any children?
No, I did not. That was not in the cards for me. I'm the last of the four. Mine.
Did you have siblings? Did you say that?
No, I was also an only child. Thus, if I had a brother or a sister, maybe they would have cared for our home better than I'm sorry to say I did. I think my father may be finding out for the first time now that I cared for the home he built so carefully.
I feel very remiss that home is no longer there. Maybe I shouldn't have come back at all.
Any more?
How old were you when you passed?
Which one?
You.
77.
And how about you, Mr. Ford?
I believe I was 76 as well, 77.
No trick question. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Sure you'll enjoy the other presentations.
Thank you so much.
Off our loading dock. You show up with a bag for a quarter, you can fill the bag and take the cookie pieces home. Some of them were so broken that we couldn't sell them, so we just let people take those out of there. The only thing is, it kind of attracted the hobos off the trains too. They like the free meal. But hey, at least they got something to eat. Because my family was generous. My Uncle Joe used to take hobos home with them. They'd have dinner. And some of the hobos stayed in the jail on Spring Street. Not as prisoners, but as tenants. They would put them up overnight or for a day or two so they could have a place to sleep, somewhere warm. And the neighbors would bring Christmas dinner, Thanksgiving dinner, just dinner in general to these homeless people that were living in the jail. So our family did provide. As I said, right before my death in 1951, as I got ill, I decided to step down. My cousin moves into the position of general manager and president, and I shortly passed thereafter in 1951. It's not the end of the business. The business holds on for 2 more years. Now, all through this time, our Lorna Doones and our tidbits were gone. Nabisco took them and ran. But they didn't take the Scotch Lassies, which were Lorna Doones. Different name. Our knickknacks, they're tidbits. Different name. Our tidbits were sold all over the place. In baseball stadiums, they outsold Cracker Jack at one time in baseball stadiums. We had also come into contact with a gentleman with the last name of Woolworth. He was an entrepreneur. He was building businesses and stores all over the place. And he liked our stuff. And he wanted to sell our stuff. So we sold our stuff in his stores. At one point in time, we were selling our crackers in 33 states and the territory of Hawaii. In 1953, we saw the writing on the wall. These companies were making mass products, packaging quicker than we could ever do. So we decided to close. Nobody wanted to buy the business, we closed. When we closed, we owed not a dime. Our debts were all paid, everything was paid. And we were able to walk away knowing that for those 60-some years, 70-some years, we provided for thousands of people, food on the table, a job, and to keep things going the way they were. Anybody have any questions? Anybody?
Well, I missed your name, I'm sorry.
Jeremiah Hitchner.
Okay.
How did you die?
I'm not 100% sure. I'm 178, you know? It's not like it used to be. No, honestly, doing the research that I did not check his death certificate. I couldn't find it, but articles in the newspapers just said he fell ill, and then he died shortly thereafter.
Do you still have relatives that live in the area?
Not in the area. There is a gentleman, his name is Boyd Hitchner. I believe he lives in upstate New York or maybe New Jersey. I'm not 100% sure. Boyd Hitchner has come to this area twice and done presentations in the West Pittston Library regarding the Hitchner family. He has some tins with original crackers in them. He's got a lot of different things to see. He wrote a book on the Hitchner Biscuit Company. It's available on Amazon. I don't know what Amazon is, but everybody says it's available. I'm lucky we had books in our day. West Pittston Library does have one copy. It's labeled as a reference though, meaning it does not leave the library. Hence, me personally, I spent quite a few days at the library reading this book. Any other questions?
So was the building abandoned then became apartments on?
It was abandoned, now,
Ave?
from my best recollection, it was abandoned for a while, and then a company that made Easter straw.
Oh, okay.
Now, I don't know if they used it as a warehouse or as a manufacturing, but then they closed that up.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If nobody has any other questions, I have one question. Who wants a cookie? The square ones are Lorna Doones, the round ones are a coconut-based cookie. Now, I can assure you, these cookies are nowhere near what I would have made, because I didn't use all these chemicals to make them. I used lard and sugar.
He's going to eat it.
You know, it's shameful, but they don't forget how much. I've had about four since this started.
Clarksville, Pennsylvania. 37 East Luzerne Avenue.
Cookies? Cookie? Anybody cookie? Cookies? Alright, I said no, you're talking. Well, either you eat them right, or one or the other. Yes, sir, I've had about four. I'm starting to get a little dry in the mouth. Very Thank you, Mr. Lorna Doones are still made today by Nabisco. Tidbits are not. Tidbits went out of favor, I think, in 2002 or 2012. One of those days. That's a.
I found out it's my own chart. I went, whoa. Oh, I must, it says down here that I passed away on January 16th of 1938. And that must be why I have my own chart, because there's a list of things on here. But we'll get to that. So if you don't mind me looking at my chart, just so I can remember things. Like I said, I was born on March 17th, 1888. If you can't see, I can come back here if that's easier for you.
No, I can see.
Oh, okay. And I remember going to the University of Pennsylvania and graduating in 1911 and going to the staff of Pittston Hospital. Here's, remember I said I was a plethora of useless information. Pittston Hospital, built in 1893, called the Coal Hospital. So can you imagine why it was built if it's called the Coal Hospital? To take care of the coal miners. Now, guess who else took care of the coal miners? I did. They put me on the staff of Pittston Hospital in 1913. One of the things I did was take care of the miners who had accidents, because mining safety was like non-existent, and men were always getting crushed by chains, by runaway wagons down in the coal mines, getting kicked in the head by mules, getting wrapped up in chains, getting caught in the gears. Pretty gruesome stuff. And it was up to me to take care of it, which I did. Now here's a funny story about that. After I patched up the miners, and after they went back to work, a lot of them, after work, would get out and find a local drinking establishment. And guess who was called back after a hard day of shooting in the mines? Guess who was called back to work because they decided they had to go to the drinking establishments, start fighting with each other for no reason, and beat the crap out of each other. And guess who had to put them back together so they could go back to the mines the next day and get hurt all over again? That was me, yes. But I also treated children. I like children, not that way. I like treating children. I like children, and I treated them, especially the ones who unfortunately got ran over by runaway coal wagons or runaway fruit wagons, or were run over by runaway horses or mules. And also we had the newfangled automobiles that would run children over, and I had to take care of them as well. Let's see, what else is on my chart? I had my own, I spoke about that. I also took care of athletes, young athletes, again, children athletes, who would play baseball. That was one of the few things I enjoyed, was going to baseball games. And once in a while, a child would, through no fault of his own, slide into a base or possibly get hit with a ball and wind up with a broken knee. And it was up to me to treat that as well. But I patched them up and they went back to play another day. So that was one of the good things. One of the other things I did, not, well, involving children, but adults as well, there was a diphtheria outbreak in 1917, I believe, maybe 1918, which ravaged the area, and I took care of I inoculated the diphtheria patient. One of the other, I never felt a thing when I did it though. One of the other things that I did, there was in 1919 and 1920, Spanish flu outbreak, or an influenza outbreak. Now, remember I keep saying, I'm a plethora of useless information.